Shit. You know, December is always like my favorite time of the year, or definitely like a top 3 months. You have Christmas, which is tight, and the snow and all that starts falling. But also you have like the feelings of the end of the year, and it's going to be a new year. A new year is starting, you know? Yeah, I always love seeing everyone's like year-end reviews, their favorite movies, their favorite albums, their favorite games. That's sick. I want to start my return to YouTube after a little bit of a break. Talk about my favorite albums of the year. I think this should be fun. I want to like just kind of go off the cuff on like some honorable mentions, some stuff I liked, and then maybe do like a top 7. Top 7, yeah, I know, not top 10, not top 5, top 7. I feel like at the beginning of this year, everyone already knew that 2023 was going to be good. There were so much people were expecting. Not only that, I think it ended up being one of my favorite years in recent memories for music because of all the new people that, you know, came out with albums that I had never even heard of them before, that just came out with albums that I loved. And that's sick. So many of my favorite artists and albums of this year this is my first year listening to them. If I had to pick like a favorite album that I just listened to the first time this year, not coming out in 2023, not, you know, it would definitely be Traveling Without Moving by Jamiroquai from 96. But, you know, something about that album I first listened to at the beginning of this year, and I was hooked. And I've listened to that album so many times just in my car. It sounds so good in a car. It's so much infectious rhythms and catchy choruses and just amazing vocal performances from JK and these bass lines. It's an album made for me, ultimately. I listened to all of Jamiroquai's albums this year, but I know I'd heard a couple songs from him in the past, whether it be at the end of Napoleon Dynamite or my dad owning the CD. Other than that, I like the album Think Pink by Twink. That's pretty good. I definitely got into Cassiopeia and Takanaka a lot more this year. I had listened to a little bit of Takanaka, I think in 2022, but Cassiopeia, like off rip 2023, that is probably debatable at being my favorite album I heard this year for the first time. Cassiopeia, just the Cassiopeia self-titled album, like I listened to while I'm on a California school trip. I was riding around these scooters, and it was awesome. It's forever like the sound of that album will be being with my schoolmates in California and just having a blast. Really got to appreciate Shack Attack. Really got to appreciate Wham. That's a pretty good album. Just the first one. Fantastic by Wham. Been listening to that lately. It's really good. I'd always loved, and I plan on writing a future review for B by Common, because I think that's just probably one of the most perfect albums ever conceived. But this year I listened to more of his deep cuts. Like Water for Chocolate is a fantastic album, and I recommend it to anybody that has any interest in hip-hop. J Dilla, Common does it the best most of the time, especially in that early 2000s era. Really learned to love everything that Paul did without the Beatles this year. I've obviously listened to that my whole life. My parents love the Beatles. It's not anything new, but I really appreciate the album Ram. I think I finally first listened to all of it this year, and I could faithfully say I like what Paul did with him and Wings. I like it more than the Beatles stuff. I think they were when it comes to writing, they were making some different sounds. They were kind of doing a little bit more contemporary things there, and I think I like it personally more. As fantastic as the Beatles are, I'm not trying to say they're bad or anything. Other than that, let's get into albums from 2023. I think starting off this year, especially in March, you had Slow Tie and Kali Uchis, I think, drop on the same day. And that Slow Tie album was really sick. It's got this punk, dark, messed up energy. I don't want to like talk him up because it seems like he's got some allegations right now. And then Kali Uchis' Red Moon Venus, I think, didn't quite make my top 10, but it was a fantastic album. It's surreal, it's beautiful, it's got these heavenly synths. I know Mind Design, he produced a song on there. I know a lot of really good, catchy parts on that. I loved Not Too Late, which is technically an interlude track, but that was my favorite song on there because it just feels like oh, it's heavenly. It's ethereal in a way. And her voice is still like my favorite voice for a female R&B artist like out there. I think she's like a fantastic sounding voice. She's perfect. Speaking of British dudes, it's like the opposite of Slow Tide. Bakar with Halo was pretty good. I like the happy feeling of the album, but it also had this kind of sad, still kind of like messed up feeling, and it's still British blokes. It's sick, and like, you know, it is a TikTok song, but the last song on there is really sweet. It's really nice. Lil Yachty came out with Let's Start Here. That album, when I first listened to it, I didn't quite like it. I thought that what he was doing with his voice was a little bit weird and it didn't sound very good. And every time I listen to it, I still have parts of the album where I'm like, I don't love this. Like, I don't love what he's doing with his voice. But instrumentally here, the production is like fantastic. I think every part of this album is very well thought out. And it definitely, this year especially, had a lot of people like me starting to realize that maybe these artists that for years music snobs have been calling them jokes, trash, come from SoundCloud, shit like that, maybe they have a lot more creative energy in them. Maybe they can create really fulfilling albums, because I think Let's Start Here is pretty fulfilling for a lot of people. Ketramine, this is no, a super fun album from them. I love Ketranada. Him and Aminé, they mix together so well. They just make sense. This is going to piss a lot of people off that it's not on my top list, but Danny and Peggy, Scaring the Hoes, it was great. Similar to Aminé and Ketranada, where it's like main rapper, main producer kind of mixing. I think every song in there is fantastically produced and mixed, and I love the way Peggy raps, and I love, like, they work together so well. Sampha came out with an album, super beautiful. Whatever engineers they got working on the album made that album sound so good. The production is so good. Pink Panther's album is longer than her last stuff. I think it channels that Y2K pop energy better than her past music did. And it's like just exciting and catchy, and got a lot of songs on there that I find myself just turning on because they're a bop. I think she's a fantastic artist, and I can't wait to see what she does in the future, because I know she's not going to stop. Conway and the Conductor Machine, that just came out a couple weeks ago. Super good. It's the Griselda formula. It just works. Every time they drop an album, it's kind of the same thing as the last, but I love it. It never gets old. It is just great boom bap rap. Mind Design dropped a really cool beat tape called Snacks. Really enjoyed that record. The Mike, Wiki, and Alchemist was really good, really fun. Same with the Alchemist stuff with Larry June. Just Alchemist knows how to produce an album. King Gizzard had a cool album, Silver Chord. Had some cool synth stuff going on in there. I enjoyed that. I gotta talk about it. Domo and Alchemist with No Idols is like one of my favorite rap albums I think I've ever heard. It's so good. I think if it wasn't for the fact that it technically didn't release this year, I wouldn't put it in a list, because I don't want to confuse people. I don't want people to get angry at me being like, oh, it actually released in 2011 or 2010 or whatever. I know, dude. I don't care. Also, the vibe of Tyler and his deluxe album was super sick. I think, like, you know, stylistically, he knows what he's doing every single time. And even if it was a continuation of Call Me If You Get Lost, it had its own vibe to each of the songs. I think Wharf Talk is my favorite music video of this year. It's funny that he can release like 6 new songs with a deluxe and still make better songs than lots of these like really popular rappers. Get into my top albums of the year. I think this style of music that Knower, or specifically Lewis Cole, channels is extremely unique. It's this new style of jazz with these crazy drum breaks, and I liked his album last year or the year before. That was a cool album, and it was a lot of fun. And then Knower's music been this weird EDM house, just hard hitting, just weird going on. They have a song called The Government Knows, and it is one of the weirdest songs I think you could listen to.
Size don't matter to the CIA, they can see your dick from outer space.
With Nowhere Forever that came out this year, it had the same Lewis Cole energy from his album that he released last year, plus, you know, Genevieve there. The feeling of that album was fantastic. It has a lot of really cool experimental sounding synths that are mixed with these jazz drum breaks that are just quick and fast and funny as well. Lewis Cole is just such a funny dude with his music. I think it was a really good album. Mr. Benjamin Oxo. It was an amazing album. I know the guy. He's from where I'm from. I've talked to him online and in person a couple times. It really was a well-mixed, exciting drum and bass electronic album. From the start to the finish was an enjoyable, fulfilling time. Hearing it all, I can imagine the state he was in really made a connection for the album for me. When I first listened to the album, I was going home from school and I was having such a fun time just like blasting this album that I didn't turn to go home. I just kept driving because I needed to keep that exhilaration up. I needed to keep that energy up, and I didn't want to finish the album just sitting down. I needed to be driving, and I did. I drove for the rest of the album, and I turned a 20-minute car ride into a 40-minute car ride because I wanted to listen to this whole album. If you haven't listened to it, I think you should. I think this album is hands down one of the most impressive things I've seen done by someone my age. I think that shit is insane.
A faithful friend to share.
This album is just special. It's an Earl album coming out, and it's finally Earl and Alk, an album together. I think Alchemist and Earl, they've solidified that they work together as a producer and rapper combo. I think the best out of all these collabs this year. I think this is my favorite one. Something about the album shines a different light on Earl as a writer and a rapper compared to any of his other albums. I think it's a very unique sound, even for him. I know it kind of sounds similar to Sick, but it's got a different vibe to it, and I really appreciate them for making all the visualizers for it, and just really committing to the vibe for it. It was one of the coolest albums I've listened to this year. I never listened to Daniel Caesar. I never really heard of him until this year with this album, Never Enough. It is soulful. It is beautiful. Really good mixing. It's the most clear vocals I've heard in an album in a long time. Something about the way he just sends you off into another world. It's such a unique listening experience, and I really think it's been kind of slept on for best album of the year because it is really, really good R&B that I really appreciated. It had so many beautiful moments. Go back and I just let that song play. No matter what I'm doing, it takes main focus there.
Reach one, teach one.
Am I surprised some of you to have this above Scaring the Hoes, which I think general consensus online is that Scaring the Hoes was lots of people the best album of the year. And I think Danny Brown on this new one showed a really different side to himself that really fleshed him out as a person for me, and I think I connected to the songs. I think the Celibate song is so fun, and the song with Bruiser Wolf is so sick. Like everything he does on there, he kind of slows down and he really talks about a concise subject, and the way he talks about it, it really proves that Danny Brown is a rapper that should be respected, and is important. He's an important person in the rap scene. This album is so fun. George Clinton is an artist that I was aware of, and I had listened to, I think, his past albums and years before, but this one really got to me. The ethereal vibe, the spacey, slower breakbeat style of this album is so fun. There's so much reverb and it's so pretty. I love every single song on here for being what it is and just being catchy and being moody and being exciting. And I think it's got a lot of meat to its bones, and I think if anybody is interested just in music in general, listen to this album.
To fuck around, see me plumbing, shot I couldn't stomach. When niggas told me I was bugging, I was seeing numbers. And touch the ground with the luggage, all I got from running. My mama told me about this curse, I was not above it.
This album is I think it's for a lot of people, Mike really toning in on the sounds that, got him here in the first place, really focusing on the little things and letting a lot of people finally appreciate how good of a writer he is. One of my favorite albums of all time is Way to the World. That album is one of the rap albums that I find myself listening to a lot in bed, understanding and really fully taking in that album. It's an important album to me, and this album is his closest, for me anyway, at reaching the same level of emotional maturity and emotional resonance. It's got a lot of bops on here. There's a lot of more songs that are higher tempo. Mike still remains true in being a very thoughtful, thought-provoking artist. And I think this album, produced by him, got a couple good features in there. It made for a classic. Looping it, hearing it all go through again, and hearing the little things. There's so much going on in this album that there's no way for me that it can't be my favorite album of this year. I think what Mike does is something that not that many people appreciate. But with this album, there's some stuff that eases you into his style a little bit more. And so if you listen to this album and you enjoyed it, please go check out his other albums, because he has a lot of other albums that I love. So yeah, that's basically it. That's basically the albums of the year for me. I did have a couple albums come out this year. I'm obviously not going to really include them on the list. I think what I did with Isaac Online, Believe the Internet, was something that you should check out. If you don't like it, that's fine with me. I don't really care. I had an instrumental album come out under G.Loopy, Enjoy Your Flight. It's a lot of fun. I really love some of the songs I made on there. Some of them are just, something I cooked up. And one of my best friends, Peyton Gray, really good guitar player, and he always wanted to make an album, and I said, bro, let's make that dream come true. We made a fun kind of jazzy folk sounding album called Timpanogos. It's under the name Timpanogos. It was a lot of fun to make. I love producing it. And then recently the G.Loopy Christmas album came out. A lot of people listened to that. That was fun. If you want some Christmas sounds, go check that out. It's on all the streaming platforms known to man. Other than that, this year has been an amazing year for me. I know for a lot of people, if it was an amazing year for you, that's okay. Life gets better. Anyway, see you guys in the next video.